Hi, we're the Leadership Society of Arizona. Welcome to our Leadership Roundtable. I'm Jake Gunnoe. Today I have Dr. Jacob Kashiwagi and Joseph Kashiwagi, and we're talking about a question that everyone's asking. What's wrong with kids these days? A lot of people are seeing some disturbing trends, like teen depression has increased by 33% in the last decade. Depression and thoughts of suicide are at an all-time high for many people in their teen years, and 70% of these teens say that depression is crippling them in a lot of their school pursuits. But we want to get a little bit deeper in this and say, is this an actual trend? Is there something wrong with teens? So I brought Joe and Jacob here today to talk about what they've seen as they work with students and families here at the Leadership Society of Arizona. So Joe, I want to start with you. Now, what do you think is the biggest issue that parents are seeing?
Well, it's really interesting. When we first meet with parents and we ask them, okay, so, what do you think about your child? It seems like all the parents think that there's something wrong. They said there's something wrong with my child. And I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. You think maybe something's wrong because, they're going through things. But as I hear them explain, this is what's wrong, it sounds like a lot of the normal things that all teenagers go through in this day and age. And it's things that I hear every day because I work with students and teachers and, what they're dealing with. And I find that the biggest misconception really that parents have is that there is something wrong with their kid. And we're finding that actually these kids are going through the same things that every other high school is going through, but maybe the parents don't see it because, they only have one child or two children, so they only see the child every day and they think, whoa, this is something big, when in reality, we work with these kids and it's something that we need to work on to develop, but it's not something that's this huge issue.
So the parents see that these different activities are causing the kids stress and they think, oh no, something's wrong with my child.
Yeah, or they don't, socially they don't talk to a lot of people. They're on their phone a lot, which in this day and age, it's kind of funny. We think that it's really common. And so helping them deal with this and understanding what they need to do is just a process that each child needs to go through. How to use technology a little less, how to talk, communicate, which maybe in the past, wasn't as big of an issue, but we're seeing today.
So then, Jacob, what do you think? A lot of these things that teens are experiencing, social stress, school stress, is this a problem? Is it something that people need to be really worried about?
I don't think it's a problem, but I do think it's something people have to be aware of. When you look at from the student side, the impact it has on the students, I think a lot of times people don't realize the impact it has on the student side. On the student side, when they're being told and when they can sense that people think they have a problem, they actually begin to think that there's an issue with who they are. And that becomes a problem in itself.
More of an identity crisis then.
Yes, they start thinking, what's wrong with me? Why am I playing video games so much? Why do I have to look at my phone so much? There must be something actually wrong with me. And that will impact everything they do. I found that as kids realize there's no issue, that the things they're going through is regular type of things, and it's just every person has to go through these things. They gain a lot more confidence. They start to realize, hey, it's okay. And the depression, the stress, the fear, the worry, all of that seems to go away. I've noticed.
Yeah, and that's kind of the funny thing too, is because students don't even know that it's a normal thing. So maybe, they don't even realize what other kids are going through, what the regular teenager in high school is dealing with. So they think they're the only one too. So yeah, it's a huge thing.
Now, Joe, you've coached how many kids this last year?
So I've coached around 8 or 9 kids, and then with that, talking to the parents.
Okay.
And it's funny because the parents are always just completely surprised with what I tell them about their kids.
Yeah.
Because it's a different perspective, just like Jacob was saying, the kid's perspective and then the parent's perspective, just two completely different ideas, thoughts, what's normal and things.
Well, so how many of these kids, when you talk to them, say that they're really stressed or they're overwhelmed?
I would say almost all of them say they're really stressed. Maybe about different things.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times, the parents think the children are stressed at different things, when in reality, maybe they're actually stressed about the same things. And they're actually trying to work on some of the problems the parents know that they have, but they both experience actually kind of the same type of stress about the same issues, which is really interesting because you think they'd be different, but in reality the parents are actually, telling these kids, and the kids are actually listening most of the time, and they actually get stressed about the things the parents are saying. So
yeah, parents might not know that children listen more than they think.
Yeah.
That everything a parent says to them, it comes into their mind and their activities. Maybe a little bit less, but it comes in regardless. I understand parents though as well. Being a new parent, I just had my first child just a couple months ago, and I can see child's crying. You've never seen what other parents go through. You've never seen another child, so a child's crying for an hour straight. Yeah, I'm thinking there's an issue, but luckily I have a lot of siblings and I've been around children all of my life. I realize, hey, that's a normal thing. But if you don't have that experience, you're looking at this baby crying for an hour, you're like, man, my child is all messed up. but it's really just normal.
So then, Joe, it sounds like a lot of what we're saying is these issues look like much bigger or rarer issues, but they're pretty normal. So what do you tell to a parent who has a really stressed child? Is it just as easy as, hey, don't worry about it? Or is there something that you actually tell them to do or do differently?
Well, I think the gap is that the parents don't understand the children and the children don't understand the parents. And so kind of what the Leadership Society of Arizona does is we're trying to help share experiences, share what's going on with these children. And then also we have a method of really helping these parents, teachers, really deal and understand how to develop children so that they can overcome these things. So that in college, when they go to college, which parents are always worried about, they'll be ready and able to understand how to solve their own problems and use this method we've kind of seen work.
That's interesting. So a lot of it is this communication gap or what's in each other's minds. So how have you seen parents and their kids bridge that communication gap or that expectation gap?
I think the first step is for just parents to be aware that there's nothing wrong with their child, right? I've never met a child where I've seen something wrong with them. Children have to learn who they are. They have to overcome some things in life to be able to live and to be able to be a productive citizen of society. But I've never seen a child with an issue that is abnormal. Everybody faces the same type of things as they grow up. So the first is just for a parent to realize that there's nothing wrong with my child. And then the second is to begin, instead of trying to tell your child who they should be, to be able to learn who your child is.
So like what their interests are, or where they're already headed, or what their skill set is kind of leading them to.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of funny, but as you guys were talking, I thought about a student that I was coaching earlier this year, and he tells me when I'm on the phone with him, he says, my mom says I have to get A+. He said, I don't have an option. And then I go and I talk to the mother a couple weeks later and I say, hey, your son is under the impression that this is the rule. And she said, actually, I told him that he can get a B if he wants. But he said that he wanted to get the A+. So I was just trying to encourage him to continue getting that A+. So it seems like both of them had a different idea of what actually was said. Is that kind of along the lines of what you're saying?
Well, I think a lot too, when the parent really listens to the child, they can hear a lot of the things that they're going through. And the hard thing is, with our day and age, having so much time, busyness, school, all the extracurriculars, parents actually don't have much time to just sit and talk and listen to their children. And that goes a lot with what Jacob's saying, finding out who they are, figuring out, that they shouldn't push expectations on them, but just listening and trying to love their children in a way where the child feels comfortable and loved.
That makes sense. But then it also raises another issue, because if a child comes to you and says, Mom, I want to get straight A's, but really on the inside, they might not actually want to get straight A's. So as a parent, Jacob, how do you work with a child who says they want something, but they don't actually want it?
Really, it's like working with any other human being. Human beings, this isn't a child issue. This is a human being issue.
That makes sense.
people never say what they always want. Everybody always has this type of miscommunication. But if a parent is under the impression that they're trying to get to know their child, if the parent believes there's nothing wrong with their child, then the parent will be able to listen. And the parent will be able to figure out when the child means something, when they don't.
It's a mentality shift.
Yes, and it's really simple to know when someone doesn't really mean something. If the child really wants to get all A's, he's going to put forth efforts to get all A's. If he doesn't, then he's going to say something, but he's not going to do anything about it. It's not really rocket science, right?
So it's kind of amazing because you can just watch to see what the child will do on their own without having to push them so much. And they will naturally show what they're more inclined to do or what they're interested in doing.
Yes.
And it's a lot lighter of a touch then, huh?
Definitely.
That's pretty interesting. Go.
And yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like, I have a student who the parents would always get on their child for doing homework. And, you know, you need to do homework, you need to get good grades. And as I talked to the parents, I started to tell them, you know, your whole relationship with your daughter is you talking about grades. So if you kind of just step back and, you know, relax a little bit, try and let her try and figure it out on her own, then your relationship becomes better. And then you'll see things happen. And unless, you know, a couple months later, he's thinking, my child's doing great, my daughter's doing great in school, and I don't have to tell her anything. But I just talk to her about life, how she's doing, and she actually can do it on her own. So a lot of the times, you know, we try and do things when it actually can maybe do the opposite if we don't have a good relationship with our children. And
so they feel that greater sense of accountability and they just start doing a lot more. Well, that's great. So the last thing I want to know is, Joe, you know, you work a lot with teens and students. So if you were to just give one piece of advice in this whole conversation about this communication gap to students and teenagers, what would you say to any students?
Well, I think for students, the one thing I really try and emphasize with them when I work with them is that their parents and their teachers really actually love them. And they care about them. They want to help them. And if you understand that one thing, then you're so much more apt to listen and to try and understand what's going on. And so for students to realize that the only reason why their parents and their teachers and things are doing things for them is to actually help them. If they can understand that one thing, then they can get so much more help. They can feel so much better about, you know, what's going on, not being forced, but maybe that they're actually trying to push them and help them in the right direction. I think that would help a lot of students.
I love that. I think so many times, even me, you know, as an adult, my mom will be talking to me. I'm like, Mom, you know, get off my back, you know, trying to tell me how to live my life here. But really, it's always motivated out of a place of love.
Yeah.
All right, and so Jacob, what would you say to parents? What's your one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's trying to work with maybe a stressed child?
Just love them. You know, realize that you have a good child. I think of Michael Phelps, right? He's won all these Olympic gold medals. That if someone looked at him when he was young, he did terrible in school, couldn't pay attention at all. If they didn't actually just listen to him, realize that he needed to swim, he would have spent his whole life thinking he was terrible.
Yeah, what wasn't he like super energetic? And,
yes. Yeah. But if you know, since the parents loved him, he had a lot of people who loved him. They accepted him for who he was and found out where he could thrive. I mean, that was the world of difference. And I think if parents know, just love your children, learn who they are, spend the time to get to know them, a lot of issues will be resolved very quickly.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, thank you both for joining us on this Leadership Roundtable, and thank you to tuning in. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please comment below or add some feedback about, you know, maybe as a parent, what do you do to connect with your children? What do you do to listen to them? And as any students watching this, what are some of the things that stress you out the most? And maybe you feel like you don't feel like you might be heard in your issues. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and we'll see you next time on the Leadership Society of Arizona's Leadership Roundtable.